Yeah, I think Mac's done a great job. He's worked extremely hard. He's got a tremendous work ethic, and in all areas, I think there's a dramatic improvement. His physical work and conditioning, working on his mechanics, working on his footwork, working on his understanding of our offense, of opponent defenses, of situations, all those things. We've talked about all those things in varying degrees, some more emphasis than others, and the emphasis on maybe some other things will come later on. We can't do it all at once, but yeah, he's worked hard. He's made tremendous strides, and he did a great job last year, but he's starting from a much much higher point this year than where he started last year. So his off season work has been significant, and I think everyone recognizes how well he prepares, and how much further along he was than he was a year ago.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast, featuring Phil Perry. And you heard it right at the top, Bill Belichick talking about dramatic improvement for Mac Jones. We're going to discuss Mac Jones in this pod and Bill Belichick's effusive praise for him on the eve of 2022 training camp. And we're also going to discuss Belichick's continued, but not unexpected, Heisman pose to all questions about coordinators. All that and more on Tom Curran.
It's time, world champion, and there ain't nothing you can do about it.
Hey, Phil.
Tom, I feel like you make a dramatic improvement every time we do a podcast. So I just want to put that out there. And
there's a lot of room. There's a lot of room
that.
to improve. Let's be
well,
candid
that's part of the reason
on that. We often spend time kind of combing through everything that Bill Belichick says for, okay, why did he do that? And even Ross Tucker from the NFL Network, NFL Media, tweeted out, wow, he just praised Mac Jones more in one press conference than he praised Tom Brady in 20 years. I mean, kind of, yeah, maybe. But I don't know if there's always got to be an ulterior motive to the praise, but maybe I'm being naive in this case. Why was Bill so effusive about Mac today, Phil?
I don't know. It was odd. I mean, you and I have covered enough of this team and of this coach, especially this time of year, to know that he generally doesn't like going that deeply into praise of any player. It's usually this time of year. It's usually, Mac's done a great job. I think, we have a lot of players who are doing great work, and, we have a lot of guys who work hard, and hopefully everybody has taken stock of some of the things they may need to improve on and improved on them. But, we'll see. We get out to the field here tomorrow. So, we'll have to wait and see on that. And that might be Bill even like on a good day. So today, Tom was ratcheted up like several levels. And that's what was surprising to me. I don't know why, really, because I think there is a reason for why he usually doesn't tell us much. I think it may be as simple as it would be nice for the team to start getting a little bit better press. I really don't know.
How about this? Let's go with our top three theories as to why Bill was effusive. Number one, just being he felt like it and he likes the kid. Number two, perhaps being he knows an awful lot is going to be on Mac this year. And he knows the kid has worked his ass off. He's reshaped his body. He studies his balls off. They don't have to put any clauses in his contract so he doesn't play Halo all night. So as a result, we appreciate that from you, kid. And I'm going to veer off my normal talking points and say, you're really good. We appreciate you. Maybe that's a metamorphosis in Belichick dealing with the modern day athlete. So that's a theory, in addition to the Occam's razor. He just felt like saying it.
I like that one.
Good one to just pump him up. Going to be right.
I like that one because I do think, not that I think Mac Jones needs that going into the season, but I do think treating this generation of players differently is something that they are cognizant of having to do at times. and maybe they should do more of it. And so maybe this is just an adjustment on Bill Belichick's part. Maybe this is something he analyzed in his own game this offseason and said, I could just be a little more positive with some of these guys, especially some of these younger guys. It impacts them more. Okay. All right. Yeah, I could see that. All right, fine. Let's do it.
That makes sense. I think we might have stumbled onto it because, again, to pull on that thread, maybe he looks at it in hindsight, and I think that he and Tom Brady's relationship is pretty solid at this point, having gone through all the bumps of a 20-year marriage, and now to be separated but still fondly looking at each other. Looks at it and goes, probably could have given the kid a bump here and there verbally once in a while. But he never went to that. He thought Brady was more inspired by being just pummeled over the head with not satisfied yet. But maybe that's part of it too, Phil. It's just self-scouting.
That could be. It could be. It could also be, hey, this could be, if I'm putting myself in Belichick's shoes, maybe it's, all right, we're about to hit training camp. We have a very different situation on our coaching staff, on offense especially. It might not, if we're being honest with ourselves, it might not look awesome to start. So if we set the bar high, or if we set expectations at a certain level, if they come down a bit from there, it's not the end of the world. People still respect me enough, and my opinion enough, and my understanding of what I'm looking at enough to say, well, even though it was maybe a bad week of practice for the offense, just listen to what Bill Belichick said a week ago, but this quarterback, he knows what he's talking about. They're going to be fine. Maybe he's trying to head off some criticism at the pass based on the fact that they are going to be feeling their way through the early portion of training camp. Maybe that's how he's looking at it. I doubt that one a little bit. I think I might like our other theories better than that, but maybe that's it too.
All right, Phil, staying on Mac, and again, going back to what Bill had to say on Tuesday morning on the eve of camp, I thought we did a good job as a media group. And it's great when somebody else, because we're in a line on Zoom to put our hands up, and when the questions that are asked are pertinent and build off of other questions that have already been asked. And it escapes me right now because I'm looking at the transcript, but somebody asked a very astute question that built off the first one. How have things changed, and why is this a different camp for Mac than it was in 2021 vis-a-vis not competing with Cam? Here's Bill.
We're just a lot further ahead in the conversation. I mean, the plays that we talk about or concepts that we talk about, Mac's already done it before. And, it's easy for him to say, well, are we going to do this on that? Are we going to do this on something else? What do you think about splitting them a little bit wider, splitting a little bit tighter, suggestions like that. I mean, that type of thing comes up all the time. Now it comes up with the background of the experience of doing it. I mean, he might have had some of the same questions last year, but without really, having the full knowledge that he has this year. And so, I mean, he's just a lot further along in the conversation. And, we have a much better feel for what he can do, what his strengths are and how to try to play into those. And, he's self-aware too. He knows what he does well. And so we want to try to feature those, but there are also things that we can work on to improve. We all can make improvements in areas. And so we've identified some of those. He's worked very hard at them, and, hopefully those will, be better. I'm sure they will, because he's put the time and work into it. But, it's not really different. It's just much further advanced. That's all.
I think, Phil, that's one of the fascinating things about the 2022 Patriots. We have the coaching and coordinator conversation that certainly does bear scrutiny. It's not the same as it was with McDaniels. But we're also looking at a second-year quarterback taking over on the fly, actually up and running as opposed to on the fly, whereas last year he was a first-year quarterback splitting time throughout camp and still was pretty good. You almost wonder, could it be a wash between the two? He's that much further ahead, but the coaching's a little further behind.
Yeah, I wonder if he can't outrace whatever coaching issues there may be. by progressing the way we think he may progress. He is the one who ultimately has the ball in his hands. And he is the one who's going to have, I believe, because he did last year at times, have the leeway to make decisions at the line of scrimmage that impact how a play gets run. I think there is still a way for him to show improvement, and I think significant improvement, even with the coaching staff being constructed the way it is. And so we'll talk all year about how much the coaching staff maybe deserves credit for that, or how much they're actually impacting him, or how much he's doing on his own. But I do still believe that's in the realm of possibility, that, and that's part of the reason why when I did my quarterback tiers a few weeks ago, we did them in tiers. We didn't do rankings, but if I was ranking him, he'd probably be in the low teens. I probably have him, 14-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even 13-ish.
Early teens.
And it's because I'm projecting out improvement from this particular player. And I think, honestly, these guys are all different players than Mac Jones. But if you go back and you look at young quarterbacks, and some of them ended up getting contracts that ended up not looking so good based on their second years. But their second year is really when they kind of have their best year. I mean, Patrick Mahomes still is kind of chasing. And listen, he's had a great year every year. But that second year, his first year as a starter, that was his highest yards per attempt season in the NFL, believe it or not. Carson Wentz, his best year was his second year. Jared Goff has a pretty good year second year, ends up getting a contract way before he should. Like a lot of these guys, that this is where it seems, at least, you're still able to get the jump on opposing defenses. And maybe after that second year, then the book is out on you, and then maybe teams catch up. But I think we could see a legitimate leap from Mac Jones, despite what's going on around him. It's not ideal, but I think it could still avail itself.
All right. Meanwhile, enough about Mac. We're going to get plenty of Mac all week long. We'll be at camp tomorrow. We'll have another pod for you, of course, on Thursday. Phil's next Pats pod will be coming out. He's going to sit down with Dan Copen this week, talk a little bit about line play and all the different things that go into starting up an NFL camp, training camp, and what to expect. Dan is a wonderful man. Big fan of his. However, one of the other subplots that, of course, continues to unfold is the coaching staff, specifically the offensive coaching staff. Bill Belichick was once again asked about offensive, defensive coordinators and play callers. Here's how that went.
Yeah, I think I've said many times that I think Matt and Joe are two outstanding coaches in every sense of the word. Whatever those duties entail, they're very good, exceptional at the entire gamut. So glad we have both of them. They do a good job.
They're very good, Phil. Exceptional at the entire gamut. That's G-A-M-U-T, not G-A-M-M-I-T, not G-A-M-E-I-T. It's gamut. Not a double M. It's G-A-M-U-T. These guys are gamut runners. And as such, leave them the hell alone.
That's
Okay?
essentially what he's saying, right?
Why did he do that? Why is he veered? Why is I think I've said many times, why is he compelled to say that? Again, about these guys. Does he understand the Q rating is really low? And he says, you know what? I'm tired of listening to not just you guys, but, Bucky Brooks or anybody else on NFL Network. I don't know. Bucky Brooks slandered him, but somebody did it. NFL. Ryan Clark, whoever nationally is saying, I have doubts about how well things will operate in New England because of the inexperience of the people who they are putting around Mac Jones. I think Bill felt I got to go out and say something again about these guys. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, and I think it's because he really does like these guys. He really does respect them. But Tom, let's just get to the origin of why they're back with the Patriots in the first place. It's in part to rehabilitate their image as coaches. And so, Bill Belichick wants to help them in that regard. If they came back and Joe Judge was a special teams coach and Matt Patricia was defensive coordinator, they're on offense for a reason too. Now they need people there, but offense is where the league goes for its next head coaches. And so now these guys may eventually be deemed to have a versatile enough skill set to become head coaches. This is it's all just part of the reason why they're in the situation that they're in. And so this is Bill Belichick doing that at the microphone, and he's not just doing it with his hiring practices and how he's going to complete his staff, but he's doing it publicly too. No, these guys are smart. These guys know what they're talking about. Trust me.
The reason he has to reiterate it is he understands the conversation out there is why are they the coaches?
Oh, totally.
And that to me, we've gone back to the play caller conversation, and there was a later question about the play caller, and Bill said, I'm the head coach. It's all that matters. It's the only title that matters here. The play caller, the offensive coordinator, all of that, it only matters for this simple reason. I'm tired of the cat and mouse, and I tweeted this. I said IDGAF. I don't give a flip about playing this cat and mouse game in press conferences anymore with Bill. He's not going to tell us who the play caller is. That's his prerogative. We'll be able to figure it out a hell of a lot more quickly than we were able to figure it out on defense, where I continue to get conflicting reports as Steve Belichick is the play caller defensively, but Gerard probably runs and coordinates more of the defense. However, Bill oversees the whole thing. So it's a troika of people. And it might be that way on offense too. But from what we've observed, what we've been told, what our friends in the media who we have great respect for, i.e. Mike Reese, have been told is Matt Patricia is going to be the OC and the play caller. And it looked that way at minicamp. So I'm going with that, and I'm not going to keep asking Bill so that he makes us look like idiots for giving a shit about the details, which to me is absurd because nobody cares more about the details and doing their job and trying to get the information so that they're satisfying their employers more than Bill. So F us for trying to figure it out. The interesting aspect of this, and the only reason it's germane to keep talking about it, is simple. If it were Nick Caley and he was an unnamed defensive coordinator, well, then we could make the parallel to, okay, Charlie Weiss wasn't named OC when he was back with the Giants, and Bill O'Brien wasn't named OC, and Brian Flores wasn't named OC. Patricia wasn't named DC, Flores as well. All of those guys followed a track to become the de facto defensive coordinator or offensive coordinator. And we all knew that they were, but they didn't have the title because Bill could shield them. Well, in this case, those guys haven't followed a track. They've been defensive coaches. They've been special teams coaches. They've been part-time wide receivers coaches in a down year for the Patriots. Then they went to be head coaches and got summarily booted out of those jobs real quick. Now they're back. And as much as we might respect the jobs they've done or had great conversations with them at different junctures, they're in charge of the football team we cover and the quarterback that is the best asset they have. So, yeah, that's why we give a shit about who is the offensive coordinator and what the titles are. Who's in charge? I wouldn't give a shit if it was Nick Caley. I'd have dropped this shit a long time ago. But if the Patriots really set out with their succession plan for Josh McDaniels to be, let's wait for Joe Judge to get fired so he can be the quarterback's coach, I find that dubious. That's why we give a shit. These guys are in positions we didn't expect, and there's a question mark as to how well it'll work out. Thank you.
Well, and it's not even just that, Tom. I mean, you're right as far as
I
all
I covered a lot of ground,
including the Caley conversation. If it had been Caley, it would just be the same thing that they've done with
right, and we wouldn't be sitting around asking because we'd get it. It was the same as those other guys.
It also, though, Tom, is the league. Like, you and I have both spoken to people who know these guys, Judge and Patricia and Bill, and who understand what it usually takes to succeed in the roles that it looks like they will now be taking in New England. And it's very rare you just get a positive reaction. I think it's fair to say, when I was at the combine and I used the word flabbergasted, the league was flabbergasted. That got some traction here back at home, and we used it in headlines. But that was legitimately the reaction of the league, and it continues to be. And, we did hear something positive from Matt Castle, who knows Matt Patricia well. He said, yeah, he can be offensive coordinator. He told us that earlier this week. And I will say, I talked to an AFC coach who knows Patricia earlier this offseason, a couple weeks ago, and was told, I really do think Patricia could coach the offensive line. I do. I think he could probably do it. And I said, well, because he's not following it as closely as we are. I said, well, yeah, that looks like it's going to be his title along with this advisor thing. But what about calling plays? Do you think he could do that too? And the reaction you get is like eyes wide. Oh, well, I mean, that's a different kettle of fish. And so, we're
Not to
we're
mention the
waiting to hear from
pushback.
people.
Not to mention the pushback I've gotten on Joe Judge from guys who have direct knowledge of how the operation went as far as him being a play caller. I mean, Nick Caley was the de facto answer to every person I asked, including Julian Edelman. I asked him about play caller, and Caley would make sense. And at that time, who the hell was the assistant, Phil, who went?
So Mick Lombardi was going to
Nick
go.
Lombardi. Nick Lombardi and Nick Caley, as far as Julian said. That makes perfect sense. So they're not. That's why we ask.
Right. Yeah. So we're just waiting to hear. Part of the reason our reaction is what it is because we're waiting to hear from people who know better than us what it takes to be successful. Some optimism. There just hasn't been much of that. That's all.
All right, Phil, enough on that. That was Bill. He was good. We had Deb McCourty and Matthew Slater. That was kind of perfunctory stuff, getting us ready for camp. Tomorrow, camp starts for real. Not exactly. Not exactly. What should fans expect if they show up on Wednesday? What should they expect to see, Phil?
You should expect to see a spring practice in the summertime. So shorts, t-shirts, helmets, yes, but slower pace, less intensity. Bill Belichick's always very open about this. They're trying to basically have a little bit of a continuation of what we saw during OTAs and minicamp into the early portion of camp. Tom, and I think it could be a week. It could be, for some reason, I remember, and they usually go 4 days in a row, right? They can't go 5 straight days. The way I've remembered it is the first 2 days are very much a spring practice. And then sometimes as early as that third day, then you see the pads. I don't know if that's how it'll work this year, but
I thought it was 4 days. They can't put them on for 4 days.
that might be the case. I don't have this.
I think
don't know
they're going
the
to come
CBA
back
stuff
Monday
as well
with
as I
pads
should.
and they'll start doing running game.
So that could be it too. I mean, what we know is early on, first few days, it's not going to be real camp, really.
Between now and Saturday or Sunday, between now and Saturday, because they're probably going to be off Sunday, don't expect you're going to be showing up and seeing hype. The offense will look terrific because they're not contesting. So, but if you want to see the offense get its ass kicked, come next Monday and Tuesday.
Or you want to see Cole
handle it.
Strange have like a one-on-one with a defensive lineman at full contact in pads like that, that probably will be a little bit later. Yeah.
Just reading some text because we got Training Camp Central today, and Mike Cardasano, our producer, field producer, just our general guy who sets up we're shooting from the Hall of Fame. So all week long, folks, remember Training Camp Central at 6:00. Quick Slant starts, I think it's August 6th. Going to have to get that ready. We're going to be down there, obviously. Phil and I virtually every day. We're going to be crowdsourcing for input. We're going to try and do a little bit more of that for Quick Slants this year. A little bit more of that. Okay, so stay loose. You might be on TV during Quick Slants. Training Camp Central, next Pat's pod. This pod, we'll have another pod for you on Thursday. I just got distracted by my phone, as is normal.
I got distracted too. Can I tell you an email that just came in really quickly?
Yeah, I saw it. You just forwarded it to me. Tell me all about it, guys.
So I find this really hard to believe based on where we live and who we are as a region, which is not always the most optimistic crowd, but a graphic from, I believe this is from betonline.ag, has tracked Twitter data from fans tweeting about their teams. And based on that data and based on quote unquote optimistic tweets for teams across the league, the team with the most optimistic fan base for the 2022 NFL season is the New England Patriots.
My guess is that algorithm can't read sarcasm.
That might be true. Or maybe it was all taken from today, because after Bill Belichick's comments about Mac Jones, the optimism was sky high, I could tell you, from Patriots fans on Twitter. But yes, according to this graphic, over 8% of tweets about the Patriots from fans were optimistic. The next closest team was the Bills at almost 7.5%, then the Rams, Cowboys, and Chiefs.
Well, you know what? Maybe it's because at least our readership generally on social media thinks that we're the most negative media crew in America. So we're often getting pushback from the denizens of New England who say, "You are so negative. Patriots are going to be fine." And that goes as an optimistic tweet. Give me your favorite Danny Amendola moment, locker room or field.
Ooh, boy. I think the on the field moment that most people will remember is the double pass from Edelman to Amendola for the touchdown. Very cool moment. Unbelievable game. Multiple 14-point comebacks. But he's got a lot of big moments, Tom, for a guy that is sort of thought of as a role player, right? I mean, he had the game-winning touchdown in the Seahawks Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
He has a number of really critical plays in that Falcons comeback. I mean, that
AFC Championship game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, they were about to lose to Blake Bortles and Doug Marrone if he didn't come up with 2 touchdown catches after Gronk got hurt. So that, to me, and the Jimmy Garoppolo 3rd and whatever it was catch against the Cardinals in the Sunday night season opener in Arizona. Those are my 2 big on-field moments for one of my favorite guys and players to have
yeah,
come
he was great to cover. He was really tough. You know, I remember having conversations with him about some of the stuff he was dealing with, and he really never wanted it out there for a variety of reasons. But I think he got hurt, Tom. I don't know if it was the first drive or the first quarter, but it was very early in his first game as a Patriot.
Yep.
In the first half.
Tore one groin.
In Buffalo.
Yep.
Tore one, then came back. Remember, he came to New England with all sorts of injury concerns, and he gets hurt right away. And so in his mind, he's saying, my goodness, well, I'm going to have to play through this. I want to play through this. And he does, and then he hurts the other leg. And then he basically struggles through that whole first season, and it looks like an overpay, and it starts this cascade of salary cuts that he has to take over the course of his career. But then in 2014, they managed him a little bit better, and he was one of their best players late in that season, and they probably don't win that Super Bowl without him in 14.
One fascinating thing about that is at that time, that's when 2013 and 14 were when TB12 was starting to take off, or at least actually germinate. Take off it's done that since. But, I'd spend a lot of time with Alex Guerrero understanding what that whole process was about, because it was important to why is Brady who he is. And the TB12 sports therapy was a lot of it. And I went there for an injury I had, and he helped me fix that. But in helping me fix that one injury, and I've had people go, well, you go there to work. No, he fixed a friggin' hip pointer. Be that as it may. I remember Alex saying, my first impression seeing Danny was, I said to Bill, when Bill said, how's he look? Because Alex did do a lot of work with players and flexibility. He said, he's going to tear his groins. He goes, why do you say that? He goes, look at the way he walks. And Danny Amendola did walk like he had just gotten off a horse. He was a little bow-legged, and he was rocked up. He was just a walking muscle, which Guerrero believes is the antithesis of what you need to be an explosive athlete, because eventually those rocked up muscles are going to go pling. So, interestingly, Amendola began to subscribe a little bit more to the TB12 stuff, work with resistance bands, get the pliability crap down. And he was never not an injury risk, but I think it was reduced. And it was interesting to hear when Guerrero looked at him, he said, he's going to tear his groins.
And he really was, I think, the season that, even though it didn't end in a Super Bowl, I think one of the seasons that maybe is most admirable during his career here was the 17 season. You mentioned the Jacksonville game, but that was because that year, that entire season, I mean, Edelman gets hurt in preseason that year, tears his ACL, and then they have to use Amendola. And so this whole thing about, we'll manage him, we'll use him in critical situations, we'll use him at the ends of games, important games, and he's not going to be an 80 snap a game player for us. He played a lot that year, and he got hurt. I think if I remember, he got dinged up a couple times that year, but he ends up again being a really important player for them late in the year, and they should have won another Super Bowl, and they didn't. But that was an impressive year that he had later in his career, having dealt with all he dealt with, and trying to fill a really obviously important role with Edelman down.
Last question before we get you out. One other news note. Jimmy Garoppolo, as we knew, has been told that his days are numbered in San Francisco. They had to sit down, and Trey Lance is officially named starter. Jimmy knew that was coming, but what's the best landing spot for Jim?
I just got to say, I mean, just how poorly managed that situation was by the San Francisco 49ers. And we said it at the time. It's why I feel okay saying it now. Is like, when you make that kind of investment in another quarterback, and I understood their logic, but you got to move on, rip the Band-Aid off. The best landing spot for Jimmy Garoppolo might be Cleveland, Tom. That's a team that's ready to win. If he goes there, they're pretty well set up. They run a similar offense to what was being run in San Francisco. And if Deshaun Watson misses half a season, why would he not want to go there and win a bunch of games?
But you can't trade him, because then the Browns aren't going to pick up $25 million worth of Jimmy, and you can't cut him because then all that money's going to hit. I believe it's $25 million. It might be guaranteed. I'd have to double check with over the cap to make sure my numbers are right, but it's a massive cap hit with this guy. So when you talk about mismanaging, the mismanaging came early. The mismanaging came with, he played his ass off for 6 games at the end of 2017. And even though that there was reticence about whether he wanted him or Kirk Cousins, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch said, this guy's got it. Let's give him a $130 million contract. Zing, zang, done. And he takes him to a Super Bowl, but he also has some serious Achilles heels to his game. Well,
he kind of got taken to a Super Bowl is how I would put it. But you're right.
Right.
I would say, let me just say this about the cap thing. Because of the way that they I don't know how to put it. The Patriots did the same thing with Brady when he was facing suspension for Deflategate, but it's just a grimy little detail in this whole situation with Deshaun Watson is that they knocked his base salary way down to $1 million this year in case he gets suspended, so that he's not penalized financially for being suspended for the awful things that he's accused of having done. So his cap number for this year, Tom, is only 10 million. Like Nelson Aguilar's cap number is bigger than that this year. So you could, in theory, take on a big number and have that be like your star quarterback contract on the roster this year, because you're kind of getting away with it. I mean, it balloons next year for Deshaun Watson. It's 55 next year for the next 5 years, actually. 55 million on the cap.
I like it. Well, we'll see where Jim lands. Quick last question. Phil was speaking with the Skull Crusher, John Henry, about his time as the lead man for Mr. Fred, and he dropped the set list into our chat here.
Yes.
Semi-Charm Life, Ride With Me, Only Want to Be With You, Big Hands Only. No,
Nope.
Big Hands.
Yep.
Big Hands Only. Only the Good Die Young. Me and Julio. Run, Elderly Woman.
No, Run Around. This is all structured weirdly, but Run Around, that was
Elderly Woman?
John Popper. Elderly Woman Behind the Counter in a Small Town. That's a Pearl Jam song.
Okay. Jack and Diane, Apologize, Free Falling. Hey Girl, Save Tonight.
Save Tonight. That's a good one. Eagle Eye Cherry. Forgot about that.
Oh, yeah. Better Man and Stay. Is that Stay? Whoa, just a little bit longer.
Oh, I wish.
That's a good song, right? Jackson Brown.
Oh, that's a great song. I think that was a Dave Matthews Band song, Stay.
That's Jackson Brown, The Loadout. It's a combination of The Loadout and Stay. I think they're merged together. I'm going to go listen to that while I take my nap before I go down to Training Camp Central. Love you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Look right after practice for us to provide you with up to the minute, up to the moment, up to the second social media updates on what exactly happened at practice. It's a little bit of controversy behind the scenes at NBC Sports Boston right now. I want that shit out there, and I want that shit out there fast. I've been guaranteed that we're going to be able to accomplish that. If not, well, then you won't see it right away. But we'll get it done. You know why? Because we always endeavor to bring you up-to-the-minute Patriots news whenever we can. And if we can't, we'll tell you what it meant when we find out and get around to it. Bye.